We are here now. This is a conversation with Chief Charles McClellan of the Houston Police Department. Chief, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Lynn.
And in the audience, we have these wonderful young people who range in age from 15 to about 22. They come from a couple of different high schools in the Houston area. We've got some Texas Southern University students. We thank you all for being here today. This is an opportunity for all of you to talk to the chief about interactions with police officers. We know that this has been headline making for several years now. You think about Trayvon Martin, you think about Ferguson, you think about Staten Island, you think about Sandra Bland. So you think about all these cases and interactions with police officers, and it raises questions about, is there profiling going on? Is there abuse by police officers? Are they heavy-handed when they pull young people over? So we'd like to hear from you, your examples, your experiences, your questions. This is an opportunity to be heard. We want you to speak up, raise your hand. We'll get a mic in front of you, but don't waste this opportunity to let us hear your side of the story. Oftentimes, young people say, oh, I never get to voice my concern or give my point of view. This is your opportunity to speak. And so we have the chief here. What better person than to ask about police than the chief, who's been with the department for almost 4 decades. So great experience, a great opportunity for all of you. And Chief, before we show the first example of video of an incident most recently, anything you want to say?
Well, first of all, I want to thank all the young people that showed up today, and this is a great opportunity, not only for you to ask me questions, but for me to learn from you, because I do respect your positions, your perceptions, and this is how you resolve problems, before something becomes an issue and controversial. You speak to each other and not at each other, because sometimes in other cities that we've experienced, once a controversy occurs, then folks don't speak to each other or communicate with each other.
They're too upset.
No, they talk at each other, and everyone has to defend their position.
Okay, so I wonder, did you guys see the video that came out of a college student who was arrested at Willowbrook Mall? He was riding around on one of those motorized smart boards. You just stand on it and you kind of roll around. He was asked to get off the board, and then he was arrested. Did you guys happen to see that? Okay, so this will be eye-opening. There was video taken of the incident by the guy who was arrested's brother. So let's take a look at that, and we'll get your comments on the other side. Watch.
Behind your back.
What was the reason? What was the reason, sir?
Yes, what is the reason, sir?
What is the reason, sir?
What am I getting arrested for?
What is
What is your
the
command? The police officer's command. And what is your command?
All right, that is college student Jesse Valdez, who was arrested at Willowbrook Mall, and they are asking the officer, why are you stopping me? Why are you arresting me? I just want to know, does anybody have an initial reaction to this? This is a young man close in age to you or the same age. Initial reaction. Anybody? Yes, he has. Let's get the mic to him.
Well, obviously, it looks like the police officer, from our point of view, is overreacting, and this is something that it may look like at first glance that he was resisting arrest or he disobeyed the police officer's order, and it might seem like the police officer is, being kind of forceful. It's just a hoverboard, right? It's in a public place, but I think at a second glance, sometimes and a lot of times, some of these actions might be justified to a degree, but at the same time, we should also keep in mind that just because they're justified in some instances doesn't mean we should allow the police officer to be forceful 100% of the time. Maybe respect the person's, ability to obey the police officer's order, and this is really important, I think, in this sense.
Gotcha. Okay. Anybody else want to jump in and weigh in? Yes, sir.
I believe it kind of bothers me sometimes how not only in this type of footage, but in other footage that has come up, that sometimes the police officers aren't always as transparent or as clear about their intentions or why they may be doing what they're doing. So I kind of see that that's exactly what's happening in this situation. So they may be saying that the police officer was trying to arrest him or detain him because he wasn't listening to the police's command, but you can hear them in the video asking what exactly were those commands, and the officer wasn't as transparent about what exactly those commands were. So I think it kind of disturbs me how sometimes the police officers aren't always so transparent or adamant about talking about why they may be doing what they're doing.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And this young man right here, you also had a question. I want to make sure we get to everybody who raises their hand.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have a question, just statement pertaining to that.
Sure.
A lot of times when we see these instances on video that are filmed by bystanders or relatives of those that are being arrested, we begin viewing the footage during the arrest. We don't get to witness what happened prior to that. And I think that is something that we should bear in mind. And I do think that body cameras, as it applies to police officers, would allow us to see the events that transpire prior to that. And that serves to both the defense of police officers accused of profiling, and in some cases it would provide evidence. But the point being, if we had body cameras or some way of filming the events that transpire before bystanders tend to start filming, we'd get a better understanding of the full picture of what happened.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you all for weighing in. We should point out this young man, Jesse Valdez, I think he was a student at Prairie View A&M. And in the news conference later, he said he was tired of seeing this happen to him, to his friends. What's your take on what transpired?
Well, it's very difficult for me to make an assessment with only having partial, footage like that. I would certainly like to have access to all the evidence in the videotape because you don't know what happened before. I can't see what the officer is looking at, who's surrounding him. But clearly, the officer has to be accountable for his or her actions. But for me to second guess without having access to all the information or facts certainly would put me in a position to where I would be Monday morning quarterbacking.
Yeah. Spoken like a good officer, by the way. Well, we should point out, in this case, we are told that the police officer asked this young man to get off of the smart board, hoverboard, whatever you want to call it. The officer says the young man was belligerent. He talked back. He was disrespectful. He apparently cursed at the officer. And then the officer then tried to arrest him, and he said that the guy was difficult with him. And so he was arrested for disturbing the peace, I think is how he described it as we take a look at the video again. So, Chief, I guess the question is, in this case, first of all, I didn't know it was illegal to ride a smartboard in the mall. Second of all, if an officer asks you to do something, what are your rights at that point? What can you say? And I guess a better point is, how do you say it?
Well, you can certainly ask questions. You should be respectful to the police officer, and as well as he should be respectful to the person that they're dealing with. But a person have all the basic constitutional rights that anyone would have in any situation. You certainly have to respond to who you are, your name, that sort of thing. But you don't have to speak to the fact that do anything to incriminate yourself or anything like that. There's nothing wrong with asking questions, but whether it's illegal or unlawful to ride that type of motorized skateboard, smartboard in the mall, it certainly could be one, whatever the mall's policy is. Was he creating some disorder, whether it's disorderly conduct? But using profanity directed at a police officer in and of itself is not a violation of the law unless some other witness hear it and they're upset or they're offended by it.
I see. So I wonder, have any of you had interactions with police officers, and tell me how it went? Any of you? You had an interaction? Okay, hold on. We're going to get a mic. What did you want to say?
What do you mean, like that kind of?
Well, any interaction that you thought that you wanted to explain how it unfolded, how you handled the situation, how the officer treated you?
Well, I mean, like for me, like when I met an officer was 2 times. Like the first time was because my dad wanted to buy some animals at a ranch, and there were these 2 brothers that were officers, and they let us buy some of their animals, and they were really nice. And then another one is my best friend. Her father is a police officer, and he wasn't any rude or anything. He was really nice, and like he, that he's a good person and everything. Cause that was my interaction with an officer.
Your experiences have been positive.
Yeah.
Young man?
I remember one time when I was in high school and we were out of class that day. I think they dismissed class or school for staff development day or something like that. So my brother and I, we were walking to the local rec center to go play some basketball. As we were crossing the street, albeit we were jaywalking, officer suddenly flashes or turns on a siren and flashes a siren. And we're looking around, and then he jumps out the car, "Get down, get down." And so, we're like, we're just going to go play some ball. What do we do? And he ends up checking our ID, trying to see who we were, spelling out our name phonetically and everything.
Did he explain why he stopped you?
Yeah, he later tells us that he stopped us because supposedly some two guys wearing the same thing we were wearing were called out or radioed in, and he was
They were
we fit the-
suspects of some sort?
yeah, suspects of some sort, and we fit the description. So he checks our ID, and we come up negative. And then he just tells us, "Go on ahead and get out of here." I think the thing that really got me was that we never got an apology. And with a lot of these instances, you see people never get an apology. When the police officer is obviously in the wrong or they made a mistake, they don't apologize. And I think that's somewhere we can start bridging the gap.
Chief, how do you respond to that?
His point is well taken. Now, clearly, if that happened the way that he said, and if the officer was looking for someone that fit his description, after he got those young men up off the ground, he should have told them why. And I'm sorry, you were not the suspects that we were looking for. And no, it takes a bigger man to apologize. And let me say this about police officers. Every single officer that we hire and every single officer across this country is not the same. But we don't have any special place to go hire and recruit police officers. They come from your neighborhood, from society. They're your cousins, brothers, uncles, all of those things. So are there officers who will engage in racial profiling? Are there officers who are bigoted, racist? Yes, because there's people in society that are that way. But when people come forward and demand that police chiefs and sheriffs and constables and folks in charge of these organizations do something different and hold those officers accountable, you will see change.
Why is it that officers in some cases, like this young man pointed out, I understand it can be a high-stress job.
Right.
You think they're suspects. So they stop, ask them to get on the ground, et cetera. And then once it's done, it's almost as if, okay, I don't have time for you. I don't need to explain myself. I'm doing my job.
Right. Well, that shouldn't happen. Anytime that you're detaining someone or, because they're apprehensive, they don't know, you don't know them. And clearly,
But once it's clear,
right,
these aren't the people I'm looking for.
No, right. That's what I'm saying. It's a communication issue. And officers need to understand how to communicate better with the folks that they're dealing with. We have a saying around HPD, everyone that we deal with is a customer. Even the people that we accuse or allege of violating the law, they're our customers, and all of our customers deserve to be treated with dignity and respect.
The issue you talked about is very similar to what happened to the former tennis star James Blake. Did any of you see that video? Okay, so that happened, you saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a guy who was formerly ranked number 4 in the world, well known, standing in front of a hotel in New York City, and an officer comes up, thinks he's a suspect in an identity fraud case, doesn't ask questions, throws him to the ground, handcuffs him, and it takes him a while before he realizes he's got the wrong person. Have you seen that video?
Yeah, I did. And I will stress that the police commissioner apologized to him. And that, based on that small footage of what I observed, officer went overboard.
Yeah, it's identity fraud. He wasn't one. It
No.
wasn't a robbery.
violent crime.
Wasn't a violent crime. He could have just stopped and asked.
That's true.